Section 55 of The Dream of the Red Chamber, Book 1.
This is the LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Elizabeth Buchanan. The Dream of the Red Chamber, Book 1, by Xueqin. Translated by Henry Bencraft Joly. Chapter 23, Part 2. Ever since he shifted his quarters into the park, his heart was full of joy and his mind of contentment, fostering none of those extraordinary ideas whose tendency could be to give birth to longings and hankerings. Day after day, he simply indulged in the company of his female cousins and the waiting maids, in either reading his books or writing characters, or in thrumming the lute, playing chess, drawing pictures and scanning verses, even in drawing patterns of Argus pheasants, in embroidering phoenixes, contesting with them in searching for strange plants and gathering flowers, in humming poetry with gentle tone, singing ballads with soft voice, dissecting characters, and in playing at mora, so that, being free to go everywhere and anywhere, he was of course completely happy. From his pen emanate 4 ballads on the times of the 4 seasons, which, although they could not be looked upon as first rate, afford anyhow a correct idea of his sentiments and a true account of the scenery. The ballad on the spring night runs as follows: The silken curtains, thin as russet silk, at random are spread out. The croak of frogs from the adjoining lane but faintly strikes the ear. The pillow a slight chill pervades, for rain outside the window falls. The landscape, which now meets the eye, is like that seen in dreams by man. In plenteous streams the candles' tears do drop, but for whom do they weep? Each particle of grief felt by the flowers is due to anger against me.
It's all because the maids have, by indulgence, indolent been made. The cover over me I'll pull, as I am loath to laugh and talk for long.
This is the description of the aspect of nature on a summer night. The beauteous girl, weary of needlework, quiet is plunged in a long dream. The parrot in the golden cage doth shout that it is time the tea to brew. The lustrous windows with the musky moon, like open palace mirrors look. The room abounds with fumes of sandalwood and all kinds of imperial scents. From the cups made of amber is poured out the slippery dew from the lotus. The banisters of glass, the cool zephyr enjoy flapped by the willow trees. In the stream-spanning kiosk, the curtains everywhere all at one time do wave. In the vermilion tower, the blinds the maidens roll, for they have made the night's toilet. The landscape of an autumnal evening is thus depicted. In the interior of the Chiang Yün house are hushed all clamorous din and noise. The sheen, from which Selene flows, pervades the windows of carnation gauze. The moss-locked, streaked rocks shelter afford to the cranes, plunged in sleep. The dew, blown on the tung tree by the well, doth wet the roosting rooks. Wrapped in a quilt, the maid comes, the gold phoenix coverlet to spread. The girl who on the rails did lean, on her return drops the kingfisher flowers. This quiet night, his eyes in sleep he cannot close, as he doth long for wine. The smoke is stifled, and the fire restirred, when tea is ordered to be brewed. The picture of a winter night is in this strain. The sleep of the plum trees, the dream of the bamboos, the third watch have already reached. Under the embroidered quilt and the kingfisher coverlet one can't sleep for the cold. The shadow of fir trees pervades the court, but cranes are all that meet the eye. Both far and wide the pear blossom covers the ground, but yet the hawk cannot be heard. The wish, verses to write, fostered by the damsel with the green sleeves, has waxed cold. The master with the gold sable pelisse cannot endure much wine, but yet he doth rejoice that his attendant knows the way to brew the tea. The newly fallen snow is swept what time for tea the water must be boiled. But putting aside Pao yü, as he leisurely was occupied in scanning some verses, we will now allude to all these ballads. There lived at that time a class of people whose wont was to servilely court the influential and wealthy, and who upon perceiving that the verses were composed by a young lad of the Jung Kuo mansion, of only 12 or 13 years of age, had copies made, and taking them outside, sang their praise far and wide. There were besides another sort of light-headed young men, whose heart was so set upon licentious and seductive lines, that they even inscribed them on fans and screen walls, and time and again kept on humming them and extolling them. And to the above reason must therefore be ascribed the fact that persons came in search of stanzas and in quest of manuscripts, to apply for sketches and to beg for poetical compositions, to the increasing satisfaction of Pao yü, who day after day, when at home, devoted his time and attention to these extraneous matters.
But who would have anticipated that he could ever, in his quiet seclusion, have become a prey to a spirit of restlessness?
Of a sudden, one day he began to feel discontent, finding fault with this and turning up his nose at that, and going in and coming out, he was simply full of ennui. And as all the girls in the garden were just in the prime of youth, and at a time of life when, artless and unaffected, they sat and reclined without regard to retirement, and disported themselves and joked without heed, how could they ever have come to read the secrets, which at this time occupied a place in the heart of Pao yü? But so unhappy was Pao yü within himself, that he soon felt loath to stay in the garden, and took to gadding about outside like an evil spirit. But he behaved also the while in an idiotic manner. Ming Yen, upon seeing him go on in this way, felt prompted, with the idea of affording his mind some distraction, to think of this and to devise that expedient, but everything had been indulged in with surfeit by Pao yü, and there was only this resource, that suggested itself to him, of which Pao yü had not as yet had any experience. Bringing his reflections to a close, he forthwith came over to a bookshop, and selecting novels, both of old and of the present age, traditions intended for outside circulation on Fei Yen, Ho Te, Wu Tse Qian, and Yang Huo Fei, as well as the books of light literature, consisting of strange legends, he purchased a good number of them, with the express purpose of enticing Pao yü to read them. As soon as Pao yü caught sight of them, he felt as if he had obtained some gem or jewel. "But you mustn't," Ming Yen went on to enjoin him, "take them into the garden, for if any one were to come to know anything about them, I shall then suffer more than I can bear; and you should, when you go along, hide them in your clothes." But would Pao yü agree to not introducing them into the garden? So after much wavering, he picked out only several volumes of those, whose style was more refined, and took them in, and threw them over the top of his bed for him to peruse when no one was present; while those coarse and very indecent ones, he concealed in a bundle in the outer library. One day, which happened to be the middle decade of the third moon, Pao yü, after breakfast, took a book, the Hui Chen Chi, in his hand, and walked as far as the bridge of the Hsin Fang Lo. Seating himself on a block of rock, that lay under the peach trees in that quarter, he opened the Hui Chen Chi, and began to read it carefully from the beginning. But just as he came to the passage, "The falling red flowers have formed a heap," he felt a gust of wind blow through the trees, bringing down a whole bushel of peach blossoms; and as they fell, his whole person, the entire surface of the book, as well as a large extent of the ground, were simply bestrewn with petals of the blossoms. Pao yü was bent upon shaking them down, but as he feared lest they should be trodden under foot, he felt constrained to carry the petals in his coat and walk to the bank of the pond and throw them into the stream. The petals floated on the surface of the water, and after whirling and swaying here and there, they at length ran out by the Hsin Fang Lo. But on his return under the tree, he found the ground again one mass of petals, and Pao yü was just hesitating what to do, when he heard some one behind his back inquire: "What are you up to here?" And as soon as Pao yü turned his head round, he discovered that it was Lin Daiyu, who had come over carrying on her shoulder a hoe for raking flowers; that on this hoe was suspended a gauze bag, and that in her hand she held a broom. "That's right, well done!" Pao yü remarked smiling. "Come and sweep these flowers, and throw them into the water yonder. I've just thrown a lot in there myself." "It isn't right," Lin Daiyu rejoined, "to throw them into the water. The water, which you see, is clean enough here, but as soon as it finds its way out, where are situated other people's grounds, what isn't there in it? So that you would be misusing these flowers just as much as if you left them here. But in that corner, I have dug a hole for flowers, and I'll now sweep these and put them into this gauze bag, and bury them in there; and in course of many days, they will also become converted into earth, and won't this be a clean way of disposing of them?" Pao yü, after listening to these words, felt inexpressibly delighted. "Wait," he smiled, "until I put down my book, and I'll help you to clear them up." "What's the book?" Tai yü inquired. Pao yü, at this question, was so taken aback that he had no time to conceal it. "It's," he replied hastily, "the Chung Yung and Ta Hsüeh." "Are you going again to play the fool with me? Be quick and give it to me to see, and this will be ever so much better a way." "Cousin," Pao yü replied, "as far as you yourself are concerned, I don't mind you; but after you've seen it, please don't tell any one else. It's really written in beautiful style, and were you once to begin reading it, why, even for your very rice you wouldn't have a thought." As he spoke, he handed it to her, and Tai yü deposited all the flowers on the ground, took over the book, and read it from the very first page; and the more she perused it, she got so much the more fascinated by it, that in no time she had finished reading 16 whole chapters. But aroused as she was to a state of rapture by the diction, what remained even of the fascination was enough to overpower her senses; and though she had finished reading, she nevertheless continued in a state of abstraction, and still kept on gently recalling the text to mind and humming it to herself. "Cousin, tell me, is it nice or not?" Pao yü grinned. "It is indeed full of zest," Lin Daiyu replied exultingly. "I'm that very sad and very sickly person," Pao yü explained laughing, "while you are that beauty who could subvert the empire and overthrow the city." Lin Daiyu became, at these words, unconsciously crimson all over her cheeks, even up to her very ears; and raising at the same moment her two eyebrows, which seemed to knit and yet not to knit, and opening wide those eyes, which seemed to stare and yet not to stare, while her peach-like cheeks bore an angry look, and on her thin-skinned face lurked displeasure, she pointed at Pao yü and exclaimed: "You do deserve death for all the rubbish you talk! Without any provocation, you bring up these licentious expressions and wanton ballads, and give vent to all this insolent rot in order to insult me! But I'll go and tell uncle and aunt." As soon as she pronounced the two words "insult me," her eyeballs at once were suffused with purple, and turning herself round, she there and then walked away, which filled Pao yü with so much distress that he jumped forward to impede her progress, as he pleaded: "My dear cousin, I earnestly entreat you to spare me this time. I've indeed said what I shouldn't, but had I any intention to insult you, I'll throw myself to morrow into the pond, and let the scabby headed turtle eat me up, so that I become transformed into a large tortoise; and when you shall have by and by become the consort of an officer of the first degree, and you shall have fallen ill from old age and returned to the West, well, I'll come to your tomb and bear your stone tablet for ever on my back." As he uttered these words, Lin Daiyu burst out laughing with a sound of "Pu Ch'i," and rubbing her eyes, she sneeringly remarked: "I too can come out with this same tune, but will you now still go on talking nonsense? Pshaw! You're in very truth like a spearhead, which looks like silver but is really soft as wax." Go on, go on!" Pao yü smiled after this remark; "and what you've said, I too will go and tell." "You maintain," Lin Daiyu rejoined sarcastically, "that after glancing at anything, you're able to recite it; and do you mean to say that I can't even do so much as take in 10 lines with one gaze?" Pao yü smiled, and put his book away, urging: "Let's do what's right and proper, and at once take the flowers and bury them, and don't let us allude to these things." Forthwith the two of them gathered the fallen blossoms; but no sooner had they interred them properly, than they espied Hsi Jen coming, who went on to observe: "Where haven't I looked for you? What, have you found your way as far as this? But our senior master, Mr. Chia She over there isn't well, and the young ladies have all gone over to pay their respects, and our old lady has asked that you should be sent over; so go back at once and change your clothes." When Pao yü heard what she said, he hastily picked up his books, and saying good bye to Tai yü, he came along with Hsi Jen back to his room, where we will leave him to effect the necessary change in his costume. But during this while, Lin Daiyu was, after having seen Pao yü walk away, and heard that all her cousins were likewise not in their rooms, wending her way back alone, in a dull and dejected mood, towards her apartment; when, upon reaching the outside corner of the wall of the Pear Fragrance Court, she caught issuing from inside the walls the harmonious strains of the fife and the melodious modulations of voices singing. Lin Daiyu readily knew that it was the 12 singing girls rehearsing a play, and though she did not give her mind to go and listen, yet a couple of lines were of a sudden blown into her ears, and with such clearness that even one word did not escape. Their burden was this: "These troth are beauteous purple and fine carmine flowers, which in this way all round do bloom, and all together lie ensconced along the broken well and the dilapidated wall." But the moment Lin Daiyu heard these lines, she was in fact so intensely affected and agitated that she at once halted, and lending an ear listened attentively to what they went on to sing, which ran thus: "A glorious day this is, and pretty scene, but sad I feel at heart. Contentment and pleasure are to be found in whose family courts?" After overhearing these 2 lines, she unconsciously nodded her head and sighed, and mused in her own mind: "Really," she thought, "there is fine diction even in plays; but unfortunately what men in this world simply know is to see a play, and they don't seem to be able to enjoy the beauties contained in them." At the conclusion of this train of thought, she experienced again a sting of regret, as she fancied she should not have given way to such idle thoughts, and missed attending to the ballads; but when she once more came to listen, the song by some coincidence went on thus: "It's all because thy loveliness is like a flower, and like the comely spring, that years roll swiftly by just like a running stream." When this couplet struck Tai yü's ear, her heart felt suddenly a prey to excitement, and her soul to emotion; and upon further hearing the words: "Alone you sit in the secluded inner rooms, to self compassion giving way," and other such lines, she became still more as if inebriated, and like as if out of her head and unable to stand on her feet, she speedily stooped her body, and taking a seat on a block of stone, she minutely pondered over the rich beauty of the 8 characters: "It's all because thy loveliness is like a flower, and like the comely spring, that years roll swiftly by just like a running stream." Of a sudden, she likewise bethought herself of the line: "Water flows away, and flowers decay, for both no feelings have," which she had read some days back in a poem of an ancient writer, and also of the passage: "When on the running stream the flowers do fall, spring then is past and gone," and of "Heaven differs from the human race," which also appeared in that work; and besides these, the lines, which she had a short while back read in the Hsi Hiang Chi: "The flowers, lo! fall, and on their course the waters red do flow. petty misfortunes of 10,000 kinds my heart assail." Both simultaneously flashed through her memory, and collating them all together, she meditated on them minutely, until suddenly her heart was stricken with pain, and her soul fleeted away, while from her eyes trickled down drops of tears. But while nothing could dispel her present state of mind, she unexpectedly realised that some one from behind gave her a tap, and turning her head round to look, she found that it was a young girl; but who it was, the next chapter will make known. Section 55.